We had
And
two.
I'm happy
One
to get
was
you a copy
like
if you like.
4 days after the guy left the program, but he was still out partying with all the people involved in the program.
Yeah.
So,
That'd be hard nexus, but, yeah, that was Phil Hart? No,
I think that was
okay.
the
Phil Hart's
second
the
one.
CEO, yeah.
It was,
So Phil Hart's executive.
Right, yeah, at Narconon International.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, someone died here as well, but we had 3 deaths that were unfortunate, and so we're going to work with the DA and get them to file, even if it's, you know, a man-second, just something to get a prosecution for 3 dead kids. But that's out of our bailiwick, so we're going to pursue what we can, which is insurance fraud, against whoever we can.
Sure.
And since Oklahoma's as big as it is, Narconon, in the Narconon scheme, we'll probably be able to go down the list. So I want to kind of, before we start serving warrants and raining search warrants down on everybody and you know, grand jury subpoenas and things, I want to know, do we need, what's MedPro's play in this thing? Just where does this all fall down? So kind of want to brainstorm. And then the sheriff probably wants to bring you out to back to Oklahoma to kind of look at a map and do the layout of the thing and just kind of get, if we serve warrants there, we're going to have to serve warrants on MedPro contemporaneously. Jackie, we're looking at 2 states there and multiple other states. You guys are going to want to play at some point. I mean, I know you are, that the feds are going to want into this thing, whether it's probably through the Eastern District and then it, you know, spokes out from there. But I anticipate, where are we going? Nestor, Nevada, California, where have you found?
Nevada, California, Florida are the chief states where I know that, Florida especially. Florida and California are the biggest facilities, I think.
And Michigan. Florida's facilities are smaller in terms of number of people, but there's
but they have multiple
facilities out there.
locations out there.
Yeah, there's 3
Now, it's
locations.
my understanding California does not file claims.
They do now. They did not before, but now there's actually been some people who have come forward through some of the outspoken critic sites where parents have come forward and said, yeah, they billed my insurance directly and they accepted their benefits. So I personally didn't think that they did, but I've just within the last couple of weeks had some people that said now that California is starting to, because their income is dwindling because of what's happening here in Georgia, because of the deaths in Oklahoma, et cetera, they're scrambling for any way to bring in money they can. And in Michigan is certainly one of the places also, but that some of the California centers have started to accept insurance, is what I've been told anyways.
Okay.
Okay, just to, you guys help me keep this flowing in a way that makes sense, because I tend to shotgun blast. Is this, and I'm looking at the non-prosecution agreement, is this a done deal?
Oh, yes, they
Yeah,
signed
that's
it.
it.
Okay.
Signed it September 16th.
Okay, so they're basically, Narconon is basically, and its principal operators are basically off the hook.
No,
Not the operators.
not the operator.
Just Narconon,
Just
that's a corporation.
Organization.
Because you're going after Mary Reiser and Mary's assistant, possibly,
Possibly,
Yes.
but for sure Mary Reiser.
yes.
Okay.
Are you aware that Matt Hawk has relocated to Louisiana?
No.
No.
Okay. If he has come up, he months ago actually.
That was the guy that was their IT person, right?
Yeah, he whenever Mary would go out of town, Matt Hawk was second in command, and he had been working at the Louisiana facility.
Well, as part of their agreement, well, at least it was told that it was going to be part of their agreement. But anybody that was employed there that we wish to interview has been instructed they have to cooperate with our investigation. I mean, how much they hold them to that?
Yeah, right.
Now tell me what you expect. Tell me what you expect to get that, and tell me whether he's realistic in his expectations or not. Because people talking and people
Right,
talking
because then
are two
that part of
different
the church is for them not to cooperate with law enforcement.
Church and the Narconon basic, what they call the basic staff act, it says that anybody any staff member who's cooperating with an investigation, public or governmental, is deemed an enemy to the group. So it's part of every instructional, every person goes through this instructional course And that's one of the things that they're not supposed to. Now, when it comes on, and something that Paul and I had spoken about, when an individual's in a room and they're personally looking at whether or not they're going to be charged with, criminal activity, then I think that'd be a very different story, depending on the person. There's people like Mary Reeser and Gary Smith, et cetera, who I think would take a sword or a bullet for the group. But that's.
Well, what about something like this, where like their own attorneys have, entered into an agreement stating that they will cooperate?
Then I think that's much more likely, especially if somebody is no longer a staff member there.
But he is still a staff member of Narconon Association.
Right.
Not with Georgia anymore.
Right. It'd be if somebody's own attorney is indicating that, then I'd give them the benefit of the doubt at that point.
And I mean, I don't know what the how the church feels on all this stuff, but as far as, because it appears by all accounts that they're probably going to throw Mary under the bus for this.
Right.
I mean, is that they don't mind ratting on one of their own, I guess?
No, somebody's got to take the bullet, and she will unfortunately be the.
And she'll probably be instructed herself by the front office or what?
That in order to get out of what they call lower conditions, she must be the person to take full responsibility for this whole operation.
Will she though? I mean, if she's got to talk, Luke, is she going to sing, or is she just going to give the basic, is she going to pull this thing out and the lawyers say this, 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 and this, and that's all you say, and don't say anything else? So she'll comply with this to not be held in contempt, but we don't get anything out of it.
But here's the thing is that we've been told is she's out of Narconon, Georgia. They've sort of pushed her out
She resigned her.
because there was a lawsuit and she was caught and proven to have lied in court to the judge. So the judge threw all of their defenses out and did basically a summary judgment. So, no.
But being kicked out of working for Narconon and being ostracized from leaving Scientology are two different things, right? If she's still a Scientologist, she's still rank and file behind
My
them.
thing too, she's got, last we heard, her attorney was one of the premier
top
defense attorneys in the state of Georgia, and for, whether the church tells her you have to fall on the sword, and, I'm assuming the church is I don't know what her bank account looks like, but I wouldn't be surprised if the church is fitting his bill, and I don't know how that plays. I mean, I don't know if, if he's gonna do a good job as a defense attorney and not let his client say anything, or if, the church is the one fitting the bill, so they're gonna say, let her take it. I mean, I don't know.
because it was our understanding pretty much all the employees that were there when our investigators started are all going to go like this to Mary,
Yeah.
which is what we.
Assume they're gonna do it.
Okay.
Right.
Let me get back to it and try and get an answer, because I don't know, maybe there isn't one. Is she going to give us anything substantive, or is she going to just basically give the basic, take her 5 years, and go down the road? Or is she going to give us anything substantive in, yes, MedPro did this, and there's insurance fraud, and Gary Smith, and it goes all the way up to Phil whoever?
Yeah, I don't believe that she would go into that much detail personally. It's certainly possible, depending on what she was looking at. If she's like, okay, take this deal or take this one, okay, well, I'll tell you as much as I need to in order to get the lesser sentence. But there's no way that she's going to open up and tell everything that she knows. That's not going to happen with her or Gary Smith or Phil Hart or anybody like that. They'll say the minimum amount necessary to get through the ordeal. Doesn't mean they won't cooperate, but it's only going to be a certain level of cooperation.
Okay.
Matt Hawk could be a different story. Frankly, he could be a different story. He doesn't have as many years in as Mary does, et cetera.
How do we find out if any of these people are just devout Scientologists or not?
Some of it, there's completion lists that are posted online as far as what advanced levels they have finished. These are people that have called information and posted it on things called the Scientology service completion list or something like that. It's by no means complete, but it does show some of the people and their history and how long they've been active and what levels they've
It's like
completed.
32-degree Mason or 10.
Right, yeah, like if, for example, the upper level ones are called OT levels, so people that have reached OT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's as high as it goes. Mary Reeser is on OT 7, so she's at the very next to the top, and Gary Smith is one step below that. So it kind of gives you an indication, a little bit at least. But there's also been such a dramatic change in the church in recent years that there are other people that have reached that height that have completely walked away and said enough is enough.
I know since the last time I met you, you've had contact from people from all over the country, really. But are there any, just before we really get into a lot of detail, anything that's come up that you think, since last time we met with you, any facts that have been brought to light or anything that you think we'd be interested in?
Well, one other thing is from the organization as a whole, if I know Michigan, I don't even know if Michigan's even on the table at this point, but Michigan, for example, and Per Wickstrom and his network of...
Perry who?
Per Wickstrom.
Per Wickstrom?
Yeah, just P-E-R, but he goes by Per.
Who's Per Wickstrom?
He was the person who initially opened Narconon in Michigan. And there were, for example, there was an email that Eric Tenario had from Gary Smith saying that he was helping Per Wickstrom work with insurance information. Per Wickstrom now runs a group of programs called A Forever Recovery and Best Drug Rehabilitation in Michigan and Indiana. And they take people, they bill, they're actually more still within the network and funneling money to Scientology because of the amount of money that he's given, but he's actually the most egregious of them all. So much to the point that Narconon even kicked him out. He still owns the building where Narconon, Michigan is located. He personally still owns the building, his corporation does. But so when tracing back through some of the things that, I don't know if you guys found in their stuff, but through MedPro, et cetera, MedPro's introduction to Narconon came through Michigan initially, is my understanding, and then filtered down to Oklahoma, and then spread over to other facilities such as Georgia.
Let me tell you, just to disclose, I've asked Mark to run the recorder here so we can get all of the information, because I'm not going to remember everything, and neither, no one writes that fast. But it's helpful because I got this from last time, and I've read it, and it's helpful. So I forgot to say that. Okay, so is he, since you say Narconon's kicked him out, does that mean RTI and Scientology's kicked him out, or is he still in Scientology?
He's still in Scientology. Still very active, still donates a lot of money.
So he's not talking, okay.
Right, no. He has umpteen lawyers, and he's not going to. But that's, when you dig, that's some of the stuff that's going to come up is
But he's still running the
MedPro.
rehab facility. He's basically doing the same thing, just not under the Narconon title.
Exactly.
He's running
Yeah.
other rehab facilities.
Exactly. He's even billing for like chiropractic stuff, and he doesn't have a chiropractor on staff and things like that. So it has certainly spread. And I don't know the degree that MedPro still is involved in Narconon at all, or if they took what they helped to come up with together, and then the centers themselves started individually just running with it. But you may recall from the deposition in the Desmond case here, Yetta McGregor, who's an executive in Narconon Arrowhead, her husband, Kent McGregor, she was sent out here to do an inspection after Patrick Desmond's death. And in her deposition, she asked what her husband, she was asked what her husband did, and he said he works on insurance lines at Narconon Arrowhead. Kent McGregor was the guy who was selling fake certifications to Narconon centers around the country that had come up where it's PETA Group International, that's what they do. They had basically sold these fake certifications. And so on top of that, they have the National Association of Forensic Counselors that have also been doing their own investigations in terms of how much fraud they committed on the counseling certification side, even though it's a private entity.
Do you have any questions? Follow up to that?
No.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, to keep this soundly on insurance.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, everything you say is more information that we don't have, and I appreciate it. we've only, our purview is, now, if Jackie wants to get in, that'd be great, but I won't wait until she calls.
Are there folks at Arrowhead that you think will cooperate?
Potentially. And that was one of the things that Paul had asked as well. Ken McGregor is a possible one, even though he's not officially on staff there, simply because his very first action would be to look whether or not he could go out of the country again. His wife is Danish. He had a settlement from a sexual harassment lawsuit back in New Mexico in the 80s. He took off, skipped country, and went to Denmark. So I think that the first thing that would happen is he would look to see whether or not he could go back to Denmark with her and just get out of the U.S. altogether. But secondarily from that, his next initial reaction, if he couldn't do that, would be self-preservation, and that if they're using his MPI number to do any of the billing, because he's a master's level licensed counselor in the state, then but he's not even a staff member. But yet, I think one of the things that will probably come up is that the billing under his number to do these assessments and so forth when he's not even physically on the property.
When you say assessment, what type of assessment?
I personally don't know the billing code, so I don't know what they would do.
I mean, are you talking a mental assessment or a physical assessment?
Mental, yes,
Okay,
not
okay.
a physical. No, Gerald Wooten in Oklahoma would be the doctor out there.
But the Oklahoma location, if I recall correctly, they have a doctor that actually goes to their facility.
Yes.
He might not be there every day, but he's there every Friday or something. like
Correct. He does the physicals minimally every Friday.
That's the name you just mentioned.
Gerald Wooten.
Gerald Wood, yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Wood.
And Ken McGregor, what does he do?
He's a field staff member. He's what I used to do, referring people for money, basically. So that's his primary role, is referring people for money. He,
You said he billed under his MPI number?
potentially. I haven't seen the billing record, so I don't know, but I do know that they have multiple numbers, and that Gary Smith claims that they have multiple licensed counselors, but the only one registered in the Oklahoma Drug and Alcohol Counselor Database employed with Narconon Arrowhead is Gary Smith's wife, Vicki Smith. And her master's degree is in education. She's not a trained counselor of any kind whatsoever, but he grandfathered her in. So in order to include that, it would be Ken McGregor and Reverend James McLaughlin would be the only other two licensed counselors affiliated with Narconon in the state.
But you told me in our conversations that Ken's a weak link.
Yes, yes.
And he should probably be served close to the top, if not first, in Oklahoma, where servants are heinous.
I believe so. He's also definitely, certainly flight risk. Yes.
And Yetta, she is for sure, she's a Danish.
Yes.
Danish national, okay.
Yes. Yeah, she used to be the executive director of Narconon Europe before they came back to the States.
Do you know if there's any certified counselors here in Georgia?
I'm not aware of any. They have hired an outside woman to do some training for them. I believe it had come up in some of the records. It'd take me a minute to think of her name. But none that were on staff at Narconon that were part of that. They had merely hired her in to come in and do some training. I believe she's working with Darrell Hall's program discovery course.
Here in Georgia.
Yes. So she's still involved, but I'm not entirely sure what they're doing yet.
Okay, and sticking to Georgia, could they, we've got this, and with this they're going to go after Riser. Is there anybody else, and I know you guys have probably exhausted this, but just for my edification, is there anyone else here that is prosecutable, has the culpability that you see rises to the level of possibly
I think Matt Hawk's a very high possibility. I don't know what his involvement in the church was. I just know that he's an intelligent guy and that he knows a lot more than people realize.
What was his role here
He was basically the deputy executive director
under Mary?
under Mary.
Okay. Who was the link here in Georgia to MedPro and filing any claims? Personally, I think MedPro's culpable in this deal. I think they're dirty, and I think there's no way they could be. As a matter of fact, based on here, you said that they do $30,000, and if someone's insurance would yield 40, would have limits of 40, they'd run 40.
Keep paying, right. They definitely
Yeah,
keep
well, they had to have known.
paying. Sure.
They had to have known.
I would assume. I just didn't personally have any dealings with
So if we
Melissa
take this,
Metro.
let's just take this state by state. Let's start with Georgia, because Georgia's who struck first. Who was the MedPro person in Georgia, if you know?
I believe it was Mary Reeser.
Mary Reeser was the connection to MedPro.
Right.
Okay.
And we're assuming that her defense is going to be, if she tries to defend herself and not just fall on the sword to get it over with, is that she's going to throw it all back on MedPro. Just by what the corporation was saying was it was poor management and, the way MedPro did their billing. What MedPro would do is, if John Doe comes in as a patient, they get all his information, they send it off to MedPro. MedPro contacts his insurance company. They get a bulk of days, 10 days, 12 days, 14 days approved for outpatient, intensive outpatient service. Well, this guy gets pissed off and jumps on a bus 6 days in and takes off. Narconon, Georgia wasn't calling MedPro and saying, he's no longer with us, let's stop billing. So MedPro would bill for 14 days, the money would come in. When the 14 days are up, MedPro gets another 14 days approved. And they go ahead and bill for 14 more days. And it wasn't for 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line that they're finally saying, oh wait, he's no longer here.
Well, so they're not, I don't just see that as being complicit in the crime. I see that as, being an accomplice.
Right, but again, part of that, the way I look at it is that falls back on Narconon, is not saying, hey,
Exactly.
they're not here.
John Smith is
Exactly.
left
They're
on
not
6-5.
Exactly.
But at the same time, hey, he left here 3 weeks ago. Okay, well, all that money that we received for the last 3
Should
weeks,
have gone back.
I don't know how, I don't know if the money comes straight to Narconon. I don't know if it goes through MedPro and back to Narconon. Does
Most
MedPro
of
have
the-
the money to send back and they're forwarding it, or?
Most of the time, the checks go directly to Narconon.
So it could have been refunded.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
And it wasn't up to MedPro to refund the money at that time. MedPro is just a billing agent.
Right.
they just want their cut. So the more they can get them, the more they can do it, the more Narconon's happy. One of the key missing ingredients as far as the motivation behind doing this is they have intense pressure week after week after week to make as much money as possible in any way possible. And
Narconon.
Narconon,
All the
yes.
Narconon units.
All of them. Thursday at 2 o'clock is the end of their week, and they turn in all their weekly statistics. And if Thursday at 2 o'clock, if they're not up over what they were last week, then they have to work, they call them conditions formulas. And if you're down, you basically have a form of punishment or a look down upon. Even if, let's say, on a financial aspect, if they did $150,000 last week and they did $148,000 this week, they're still technically in a lower condition because of that $2,000 difference.
And they were funneling, I read Michigan was,
Hammered.
okay. In this, when Michigan was down on their luck and Oklahoma was up on their luck, money was being sent from Oklahoma to Michigan.
Definitely. And over to the UK, and money's being sent to Arrowhead right now.
Yeah, we did our search warrant. There was checks from Texas, California,
Yeah,
all
there's
over.
money being sent from Larry Trahan at Narconon Fresh Start in California over to Narconon, Georgia, up until just prior to the, just to pay the rent, keep the lights on, to try and stay open until the decision came down.
To your knowledge, when did Jeannie Trahan come here?
It would have been right after the ruling from Judge Heydrich here in the Desmond case.
Well, I found when we did the images on their computers, there's documents on there from Jeannie. I mean, they're signed by her, or they're typed, so it's got her name on it.
Mm-hmm.
From October. When we interviewed her, when we did the search warrant, she said she started in February this year. But there's stuff in there from October time frame. I've been working on scheduling and whatever, I think I should be paid X amount of dollars. So, I mean,
She took over as the executive director. I'm sure she was sent for help, and they do what they call missions, where they'll send people in to work for a little bit, and then fix up an area, and then head back to Los Angeles, or something like that. Jeannie has been doing that at centers for decades, where she'll come in periodically and then wind up staying at a place.
and since the last time I talked to you, I think I asked you about him the last time, but has Alex Davis, has that name come up in any way? Anybody you talked to?
Not for me.
Okay, he mentioned that he had worked at other doctor's offices and he understood insurance, but he was also the son of, he wouldn't tell us his parents' name, but the only Davis I've found in any of the records was Tom Davis, who, for everything I can find, was pretty high up in their organization. He was
Yes.
third or fourth in command, from what I can tell. So just from my assumption is that he is a Scientologist and that he, like you were saying, I think he gets sent around places to fix stuff up, and so that's why I was curious if the name had ever been popped up, if it mentioned anything else. Because when we were there, he acted like, I just started working here in February, I don't know anything about all this, but it sounds to me like he gets moved around.
Told to start working and audit these insurance records.
Right, get all this, because it was a disaster. I don't know, hopefully y'all have better luck with the records over there, but, we'd have 7 files for the same person in 6 different offices.
Yeah.
So, it's a disaster.
One thing you'll find in Oklahoma is they have been meticulous with their records. They demand it. They have, for part of their CARF accreditation, for example, they have to go through financial audits routinely. Obviously, they don't inspect the insurance billing process, but they inspect their books, they inspect their record keeping. So they do have much more thorough records, dates, timelines, etc.
And where would those records be located?
Well, hold on.
On site?
Can I get to that?
Sure.
Let me stay on task here. But those are the red books?
No,
The red volumes?
The red volumes are the Hubbard's technical volume.
Okay, I just want to, we'll get back to that. Now,
Okay.
who's Jeannie, sticking to Georgia, who's Jeannie Train?
She's the executive director now. Well,
Since
they were
when?
shut down, but since February, since Reiser skipped down and jumped out of there. But also, have you heard anything if she is back in Georgia or if she's in Florida? When we were there, they told us she was still in Florida. Her office was completely still intact. But
Mary?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't heard her pop up
Because
anywhere.
whenever she resigned, we heard that they shipped her down to Clearwater, but when we did the search warrant, they told us that she was
Still in Florida.
yeah, and worked for them on a consultant basis or
Right.
something like that. So.
Have you talked with anyone who was affiliated with the Georgia location since they've shut down or prior to them shutting down, but when all these problems existed that would possibly be willing to talk to us?
I don't know how much he would know about the financial side of things, but I do know 2 people that I've spoken with that used to work at Narconon, Georgia. One of them is Gordy Weinand.
Who?
Spell.
Gordy Weinand, Weinand. He quit working there in December of 2010, and he did community relations activities for them. So he wasn't really involved in financial stuff, but I've spoken with him since. And Daryl Hall as well. And Daryl is trying to distance himself, but
Trying
he's
to
very
distance
close with Matt
himself
Hawk from Narconon.
Is he a Scientologist?
No.
Okay.
I don't know how much he knows. I don't know how much Matt has told him or how much access he had, but he was running the housing operation.
I've actually been informed that so many people have had their hands on billing as far as actually just submitting paperwork. And that's kind of where our issues with everything is getting that intent, right, and being able to pinpoint it on a single individual when it seemed like it was just, hey, you done with your paperwork? Okay, come over here and do some billing. And, it was just like a practice, everybody knew how to do it, and were they technically committing fraud or were they just billing what was in front of them? Did they know what they were doing kind of thing? And I've actually been told that he, did billing at some point. So he was one of the people we wanted to talk to because he also is the operator or security guard or whatever for their housing. So,
Right, and I'm pretty sure he was a notary public and had notarized several of their documents as well.
And his notary was, they had several blank documents that were notarized and signed and ready to go.
Yes.
And he wasn't even there, so they're blank. I mean, he signed them and notarized them, and the document's not even filled out, so.
That's, I do know that he's concerned about that.
Well, that's
That he knows that you
crime in
know
Oklahoma.
and that he's concerned about it.
It's a crime here, but I don't know, I mean, there were copies, so it wasn't an actual,
It
signature.
doesn't matter, it's on, the onus is on the notary to make sure that it's signed and executed by the other person in front of him.
Right.
If he knows something, that's maybe the hammer that you hand
Right.
over him to get him to talk.
Do you have Gordy and Daryl's contact information?
Yes, not on me, but I do have it on my computer, yeah.
Just
Okay.
email it to
Can
me
you-
whenever you.
I can do that, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Daryl had invited me out to see his new program because he asked me to help clean up his image as far as his past connection to Narconon, and I basically said, well, I don't see that you've done anything. You've been complicit in some of this stuff. So what is it that you've actually done to make up for the things that you were a part of? He went blank and he said, look, I promise I'm not doing anything Narconon related. Why don't you come out and see the place sometime?
What's he
And
doing now?
He's running a recovery support home still. That he runs the housing that's GAR accredited, Georgia Association of Recovery Residences, and he brings in practitioners to deliver services to his clients. So they come from in-state, out-of-state, stay at his housing, but then they separately pay therapists, doctors.
Is he at the
whatever.
same location? Is he using the same apartments
Yes.
over there off of,
Picture induction?
Yes, same apartments. He's whittled down his number of apartments, but same location.
because when we went out there and we just kind of, this is before we done our search when we were kind of just scoping out the area, because we weren't told that he was the director of housing or whatever. We were told he was a security guard. Him and his son, and their apartment was on one end and the housing for the students was all the way on the other end, and they had two vans outside for them to bus people around in. Is that still, to your knowledge, is that still the same operation? He's just doing it under...
Just under his own separate corporation, or I guess he had separate paperwork as a corporation, but yeah, he's still doing, he's doing the same thing. He's just not sending them to Narconon because there is no Narconon.
Is he using the same students, or is he bringing...
Some of them are the same ones back, yes. Some of them did go to Narconon, Georgia, relapsed, called back up, and wanted to try whatever he has now, including minimally one former Narconon Georgia staff member is working with him as well.
Is working with them, or...
Yeah, John, I haven't met him. John, he answers his 800 line that's on his website, Discovery Course.
Okay, so the money here was sent, the 10% was sent from Georgia to LA or wherever it went. It went somewhere.
Two places.
To what?
2 places. 3% went to Clearwater, to Narconon East US. 7% went to Los Angeles for Narconon International.
Okay.
I thought East US was in New York.
The church's East US office is in New York, but Narconon's East US office has been in Clearwater for a number of years.
Okay, so Scientology East US is New York.
Yes.
Narconon East US is in Clearwater.
Right.
Okay.
And theirs went to Narconon, East US.
Correct.
Is there a Narconon location in New York?
No.
Okay.
No, there's not. They're trying to get a facility open outside of D.C. currently. The church just bought several properties for Narconon, similar to Arrowhead, as far as the church buying the property. They're trying to put one outside of D.C. near Camp David, somewhere southeastern Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Around all the military people?
Yeah. I've got some emails from the church recruiting former Narconon graduates to try and come work at this new facility.
Why are you still getting that?
Because people who used to be involved, who have gone about their lives, who still get contacted and are not currently involved sometimes forward me information because they know that what they're doing is wrong. And they don't want to personally put themselves in jeopardy as far as being outspoken about it, but some of them will forward information.
So she couldn't catch it.
Well, that's all. Still. Do we have all the names of these people? I mean, whether they're in Georgia or Oklahoma or Michigan or wherever, if this thing progresses as I anticipate it will, speaking as a prosecutor for 10 years and as a lawyer for 20, yeah, I think those names are going to be important, whether it deals with their case or our case, or ultimately the FBI's case. Because those people are going to be, I mean, they're going to be helpful, possibly, but I hate to just think, well, you're thinking Helen doesn't know anything, but in fact, she might buttress 2 more witnesses, and
True.
that was always fun for me to have 3 witnesses say the same thing rather than just one.
Sure.
Because the jury says, well, 3 people can't be wrong, whereas 1 can.
Sure.
So I'd love a list of those, a witness list. I don't know, what does your witness list look like?
It's going to be a handful of employees down there, and I mean, that one, like we said, Darryl Hall here, probably that Matt Hawk, he was one of the people I wanted to interview. It's not going to be huge, like I said, especially after that agreement came out. I mean, that really ticked me off. So,
Whatever insurance companies we use, we'll
Yeah.
have to have someone come in with us.
yes, I mean, your folks from your insurance companies will probably end up being somebody from MedPro.
Well, when insurance comes, you talking the same ones that we're looking at?
United.
Healthcare, Cigna.
Right now, we're going to use United and Blue Cross. Like I told you, Cigna was
Cigna one of them.
Cigna's one of the ones for y'all. We've been in contact with Cigna and gotten some information from them, but like when we were putting all this together, we were approaching these companies as a, hey, you've been defrauded for millions of dollars. You're going to want to get all your ducks in a row and get stuff on board so we can possibly help you get some reimbursement here. And the person we contacted with Cigna was, just for lack of a better term, not interested. I mean, she was not getting stuff to us in a timely manner. We had to send her several requests. So we started dealing with the companies that we were getting information from. So if Cigna wants to get their reimbursement out of the deal, then they are going to have to start giving us more information. So right now we're using Blue Cross and United, which will give us more than enough cases to present to the
I mean,
grand jury.
that in itself will be many millions.
Yeah.
Oklahoma didn't work with Blue Cross. Blue Cross wouldn't pay Oklahoma because they didn't have a state certification.
I think United gave them some headaches out there as well. We found an internal document that was talking about, I don't know, I think United gave Georgia a hard time, and they were using Oklahoma's paperwork that they had sent them to get approval as a way for them to get approval here.
See, that's one of the things when we met back in May, when I had mentioned, what kind of facilitation of information back and forth, and I said there may be a hat write-up, for example, from Gary Smith, or a packet of documents like that.
We have the insurance hat.
Okay, you do, okay.
Yeah, we found that.
Okay, then that more than likely
I
would
think
have.
that's actually where that memo was
Right.
their insurance had, so.
Is that a hat
Makes
pack?
perfect sense. That's not, it's like an unofficial one that is used for the centers, but it's not part of the broad staff.
Okay, a hat pack, which are very detailed instructions of step-by-step to do a particular job or position within the organization.
Yes, it's good you have a glossary, because it's necessary for,
I think he's reading off of what you told him.
I am.
Oh, okay.
That's the-
I've highlighted a dog-eared
Okay,
page.
yeah,
okay.
So, just to get the lingo down, but I'm learning as we go as well.
okay.
Okay, so you're using Blue Cross and Aetna, and we're
United, we're using Blue Cross and United.
looking at Blue Cross, Aetna.
Cross United, Aetna.
I think you said
There's
Cigna had
United.
been helping you guys a lot too, weren't they?
Well, Cigna, we've got some stuff, some actual claims from them, and where they had gotten medical records, so we have some.
Well, like I said, I mean, United, I know for us is going to be a huge help, for you guys probably as well. That memo we saw, it had mentioned United being the largest biller they have across the country, and that
Yeah.
from all the locations that are billing insurance, that they bill United over $1 million a week, just for their Narconon centers. But that's all around the country.
This might be a good time for me to stop and, Nestor, be more specific on what you're doing for Oklahoma.
Well, what we did is we asked for the universe of claims, mental health claims, using procedure codes, a few that you've given us, and also we have folks with a lot of benefit coding experience and ones that they thought would be utilized. So we then got that universe from each of these entities, and we've then gone and we've looked to see if Narconon is aberrant, in the volume of claims and the amounts of claims, and see if there's anybody else. And we think we've found somebody else too. But we now that we have the claims, we've asked for copies of the claims, and then now we're trying to get medical records of which, because that's the next step, trying to get the medical records, the detail for the claims, and those have been non-existent, basically. We have some. We've also asked the companies, have you done any, we haven't mentioned Narconon individually, we've asked them, have you done any internal investigations of any of these providers? And if so, give those to us, and they haven't, we just asked them for that.
You asked who for this?
We asked the insurance companies.
Okay. I know when we did our search warrant, Blue Cross here in Georgia had done an internal, a month or two prior to us going in there. So when we went in there, all the Blue Cross stuff was in file cabinets, in boxes, in bankers' boxes with all the medical records, the treatment records, were all in there together with the patient's name written, which patients were in the box were written on there. One of the things that we have found, we're still going through those, trying to make a spreadsheet out of all of it with the dates of treatment. But I know on one of the ones that I've been through, there's records in there where, there's handwritten notes and everything else, and there's a piece of paper in there, whatever the guy's name is, I can't remember off the top of my head, but, he got fed up, boarded a bus at 11 o'clock at night, and went back to Michigan. And that's on the 17th of March. Well then, all in blue handwriting, all signed by the same person on the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, all the way up through like the end of the month, there's treatment records created after that document. So to me, it shows that Blue Cross said, hey, show us medical records for treatments on each person from this date to this date. And they went through and said, holy shit, we don't have them for the last 2 weeks on this guy. And they started making them.
Manufactured them.
So, but it was all in there together. There's the document saying he went home on the 17th. Well, you got a bill for the 18th through the 27th or something like that. So, that's going to be definitely one of the examples we use when we do our case. It's a smoking gun as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's why, once we know what all we're going to get from these insurance companies, that's when we then need to go to Narconon, because if we then go and we find, we have these claims for these dates, and we find the treatment records, and they probably haven't gone through and done all the treatment records that they should.
Well, and like you said, you're having a hard time finding, getting copies of the medical records from the insurance companies. We did too.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because it's behavioral health that there's not this whole, hell, you get in a car accident and the insurance company wants to ask you 20 questions about it. But if you send a bill for behavioral health, it's like they just, okay, that's $20,000, here's $20,000. I don't know if they're afraid to ask questions about it or what, but there wasn't many treatment records from the insurance companies when we sent the request either before we did our search warrant. So that was kind of why we did our search warrant, was because we wanted to be able to go in here and we went in there for the treatment records so that we could compare them to what the insurance companies gave us as far as bills they'd received.
Speaking of records, let me ask you this. On the Arrowhead site, where physically would the records be located?
Multiple places.
Okay.
First of all, they have a warehouse out back.
Okay.
With all of their old records. It's semi-full. 10 years.
You guys are going to make sure you hit that, because we didn't know about, they had a dumpster outside of our location and it wasn't on our search warrant. We didn't know about it, so.
That's the thing, is we're going to have to go over that with you and the map in Pittsburgh County. sheriff's office.
Yeah, because there's something called case supervisor offices. That's where most of the current on-site clients are. People that are there at that time are usually in the case supervisor's office, and then, but yeah, I can detail out on a map where the insurance offices are, which is where the where the treasury offices are, which is where the insurance stuff will be, where the executive director's office is, and financial director, et cetera, legal office.
What, her name, every time I talk to you, I keep mentioning her, but I can't remember her name. The Treasury Secretary, the one here in Georgia.
So Deborah Lauer?
Was there a Brenda? Deborah, I want to say Brenda is the name I was thinking of.
I'm thinking Deb Lauer was on loan from East US. She was present that day that the warrant was executed.
Yeah, I think she's the one we kicked out because
Yeah.
she was trying to run into the, that's the lady I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Do you know of her, what her involvement with all this stuff was? She was the Treasury Secretary there, or at least at the time that we did our search warrant, she was.
She was usually sent in from Yvonne Rogers at East US to, normally when Narconon Georgia's payments were behind, they would send in Deb Lauer to Narconon of Georgia to inspect their financial records to find out how come they haven't been paying their commissions. Where's the money? Where's it going to? What's it being spent on? So I don't know how much she would know about insurance, but she had been there multiple times. Even back when I was still involved back in 2009, Deb Lauer was being sent up to Georgia from Clearwater to do.
Now, I remember you saying that Treasury Secretary's computer was one we'd want to take a look at. There'd be good emails and stuff in there. Is that the lady you were speaking of?
Deb Lauer, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you looked at hers?
No, I haven't looked at hers yet. I have hers and Jeannie's and Mary's still to go through.
Oh, Mary's will be interesting.
Yeah.
What do you expect them to find?
I expect them to find the actual the intent to conspire. How are we gonna cover these things up? That's what I think you're gonna find in Mary's.
Insurance.
That's what we're looking for.
All of the above. The insurance, the death, the lawsuits, I think
And you
all
think that's
that's
going to be communications within Narconon of Georgia or
within Narconon, Georgia.
international, and
2 international, 2 East US, 2 church officials, 2...
how are we going to cover up this insurance billing?
How are we going to address it? What should we do?
And who within Georgia would she have? Matt Hawk and Tom Davis?
Tom Davis, Matt Hawk, primarily.
Okay.
When you said all of the above, I said insurance fraud, and you said all of the above. Again, we know there's insurance fraud, we suspect there's insurance fraud, we don't know what the culpability and the deaths were in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what else? What are the other, what I think may be crimes?
Well, from my limited knowledge on a RICO statute, if you look at the wire fraud, and you're talking about knowingly providing false information in order to get money and bring people across state lines, things like that, that is much more, knowing that they don't have the success rate that they promote, knowing that they don't have studies that they claim are studies, knowing it is an intentional fraud to deceive people, to get them to come to their program, denying their connection with Scientology when the financial audits show thousands of dollars per week being sent directly to the church. That kind of stuff. That is much more of the intent to defraud people that goes above and beyond the insurance.
Well, then how can Mary, just again, thinking as a prosecutor, Mary can't, I don't see how they can not have some culpability in this as an accessory. Somebody up the chain is going to be an accessory to some of these crimes, either passively or not. And there aren't degrees of that in the law, at least in Oklahoma, and I doubt
There
anywhere
isn't
else.
here in Georgia
I mean,
either.
you're either an accessory to a crime, a co-defendant, as we don't file in accessories. We do in some, but basically you're a co-defendant when we file.
Conspiracy to commit.
Right. You're a co-conspirator, and that's why we would file it there. So, maybe we go from Mary to, I'm not that interested in going down, in Oklahoma at least.
Right.
I want to go up.
Right. Well, from Oklahoma, for example, if you're talking to Gary Smith, that would include direct communications to top level officials at Office of Administrative, or Office of Special Affairs, OSA at Scientology International, ABLE International, Narconon International, and Religious Technology Center.
What about Social Betterment Properties, Inc.?
They own the facility.
That's
So
where the money is.
That's a shell anyways, that's church.
But to get to the assets of Scientology,
Yes.
That's where the juice is, right?
That's where the property is, but Narconon of Oklahoma, remember, they had stashed millions in, they have, I think, 12 different accounts at Bank of Oklahoma. They have the building fund account, the general liability fund. Remember in the last transcript, it was kind of a shock that they had a fund specifically to address future liabilities that they knew they were going to come under. Their main account, their field staff member account where they paid commissions out of, they have their general reserves account, and they would stash in like 5% into this account every week, 2% into this account, and it's week after week after week. And they started doing well financially at the end of the 90s, all the way up until really the last 2 years. So for the most part, they were stashing millions of dollars this entire time into all these different accounts that they have saved up in cash.
So did they not pull that money off and then forward it on to the church?
Some of it has been,
On
absolutely.
a weekly basis.
On a weekly basis. Some of it goes to Narconon International. So, on a monthly basis, they're paying $30,000 a month to Social Betterment Properties Incorporated. And then on top of that, they would get lots of pressure from the church, from ABLE, and from multiple churches throughout the United States to donate for books, to donate for sending staff members to Clearwater, sending staff members to Los Angeles for auditing and training, things like that. So there's money going out every single week. If I had to put a rough guesstimate for Oklahoma specifically, aside from their regular 10% that they're sending plus their rent, I would assume that they're sending out an additional $200,000 per year to church entities directly. International Association of Scientologists, and the Church of Scientology, Clearwater, and things like that.
And I'm sorry to be not informed, but have they separated the church into subgroups, and this is what you're talking about, these different subgroups?
They're all their own corporations separately. So there's, for example, in Clearwater, you have the main church is called FLAG, and so there's a Church of Scientology FLAG service organization is one. One of the just fundraising entities is the International Association of Scientologists. In Los Angeles, you have Advanced Organization, Los Angeles, the American St. Hill Organization, the Church of Scientology, Los Angeles. You have all these different entities that are all separate, but are all part of the same group. ABLE, which is, owns the Narconon rights, but it's staffed entirely by church Sea Org members. In fact, you can't get a job there unless you're signed a billion-year contract. But it's a separate nonprofit corporation, supposedly.
And this is which one?
ABLE.
Okay. Did you get your question answered?
think so.
Because there is a, well, no, you need a flow chart here. And my question is,
Sorry, I took a note last time.
above ABLE is Religious Technology Center.
Yes.
Now, you said last time that RTC is the guarantor, basically the big daddy over the Scientology Corporation.
Correct.
Did you mean there's L. Ron Hubbard, then there's RTC? Or
Right.
are there...
Except now it's David Miscavige. David Miscavige.
Okay.
He's the chairman of the board of Religious Technology Center. He is the top of the top.
So it gets no... Okay. How do you get... Can we... When I mentioned earlier that we want to get to the Social Betterment Properties, Inc., from a financial standpoint, is the RTC better funded? If we went to their bank accounts, who has more money? RTC, ABLE, or Social Betterment? Or if we get to...
RTC would have, ultimately RTC would have more money because ABLE is only given enough money to operate. It's not taking in much money itself. And the staff members get paid $50 a week, and the building is paid for
They get paid $50 a week?
Yeah,
All
they're
the Sea Org members.
Those are Sea Org members that sign billion-year contracts. They get paid $50 a week. They stay in communal housing. That kind of stuff.
And that's in California, right?
That's in California and Florida. And
Is it the one in Clearwater? I know there's a compound down there. Is that an ABLE compound, or is ABLE within that compound?
they have some ABLE staff members in Clearwater, just a handful. Most of them are in Los Angeles. ABLE International is in Los Angeles on Hollywood Boulevard. And that's, yeah.
But the Sea Org is like the devout of the devout.
Right. They're the ones who staff the higher level.
Spell what you're saying, Sea Org.
SEA-ORG is.
Yeah, it's for Sea Organization. Hubbard got his most devout followers in the late 60s, early 70s and set sail for a few years as he was a fugitive.
This is the first time I've heard of Sea Org.
Okay, yeah, Sea Org is the...
Mind if I give this a shot just so I can see? You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I
Yes.
just want to see how correct I am. But in the 60s, he was running, and so he got the devoutest of devout followers, and they went out on a boat, and he preached to them for a few years while they were out there, and so they came up with the name Sea Org. It's a sea organization for all his followers that were devout, and followed him out to sea for so long.
Yes, they were... The paramilitary group, they actually dress up in like naval uniforms and things like that. They landed in Clearwater in 1975, and that's when the Sea Org officially left the sea and came to land.
And they signed billion-year contracts, basically committing their souls to be Scientologists forever.
Yes.
And give up everything they own, and they live off, the church pays them $50 a week for their services. And I believe in Clearwater, I don't know about the one in California, I have family that lives around that area, so that's why I semi-know about them. But they're in a compound, they're gated away from the outside world, they're bused to and from their Scientology workplace, and have no contact with the outside world, and ever. I mean, they're bused to and from work, and their work is a Scientology-based office.
Are they considered then, Luke, more, or would they be considered more devout Scientologists than Gary Smith or someone like that?
Gary Smith would be a Sea Org member, but he's not qualified because he took LSD. That's a disqualification, immediate disqualification to be a Sea Org member is if you took acid at any point in your history.
Is there anything else or just acid?
That's the main one.
Really?
That's the main one. That's the main one because Hubbard said it scrambled your mind too much, and therefore he wouldn't allow somebody to work under.
What if you drank a lot?
That's perfectly fine.
You okay?
Yes. Yes.
Smoke pot,
Yeah.
give me some more,
Syphilis.
snorted
All
coke.
that. Yep.
You're good.
Yeah. If
But
any
if
of that
you
has
did a
been done
hit
in
of
the past,
acid,
then you're automatically not qualified. And Gary Smith said to me personally, and he's gone on record, he would be a Sea Org member if he had not taken acid in the 70s.
Are any of these people that we've discussed in the past, Goslin, Santamon,
Yetta McGregor used to be a Sea Org member. Mary Reeser used to be a Sea Org member.
and what
really?
happened?
Yes.
What happened? How do you used to be and not anymore if you sign a billion years and a billion years isn't up yet?
Well, because ultimately you can leave, but when you leave, they make you sign documents saying that you'll never speak negatively about them in public. They give them something called a freeloader's debt that you must then pay them for the training you received while you were a staff member there.
So they voluntarily left or they were kicked out?
Voluntarily left. Yetta actually married Kent McGregor in 1989, I believe, in Chilocco when Narconon first opened in Oklahoma. Kent joined the Sea Org for a very short period of time, and then they both left together. And then after all that, Yetta went back to work for Narconon.
But when they leave, they're not leaving like for reasons that you leave, because they're still members of the church. They're just leaving to not be confined inside the compound and go make some money doing or branching out to spread the word more than what they would do within that compound, correct?
Correct, yeah. Most of the people who leave the Sea Org do it because they have some kind of family issue that comes up or something like that.
So there's no shunning attached to it?
A little bit. They have to pay off their freeloader's debt before they're allowed to participate in any future services. So sometimes if somebody spent 10 years in the Sea Organization and then they decide to leave and go have a baby, then, because they're not allowed to have children in the Sea Org, if they decide to leave and go have a baby, they're handed a bill for like $50,000, $60,000, sometimes $100,000 or more, and said, okay, you can be part of the group, but you can't participate in any further auditing or training, auditing is their counseling, until you pay us back this money.
Okay.
While they were getting paid $50 a week. They have been given a bill for this.
Do Scientologists go to a church for worship, or is it strictly just the way of life? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. They take classes or courses that are all on a check sheet. They read a book that Hubbard
Right.
wrote, or listen to lectures that he
Right.
recorded, and then they do their counseling at any point in time in their what they call auditing. But there's not a.
So there's not a Sunday, like,
There is a Sunday service.
I'm back, because I go to
Right.
Sunday
Right.
service.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there's not a service that
They have one for face value.
encompasses his preaching.
No, they have a Sunday service for face value only that lasts usually about 15 minutes at every Scientology church, and hardly anybody goes. So it's for face value only.
Is someone talking?
Yeah, somebody talks. Somebody will read something from Hubbard's writings that they consider their spiritual scriptures.
Okay, I want to get from Georgia to Oklahoma.
Okay.
One quick-
Well, yeah, no,
What's
talk all
Tom-
you want.
What's Tom Davis' role? Just-
Tom Davis, he worked in and out of the financial aspect and legal aspect for many years, both in the church in Atlanta as well as obviously Narconon, Georgia. He may have, I don't know if Tom Davis was ever in the Sea Org or not, but it's possible.
What is, what was his role here in Georgia, to your knowledge?
My involvement with him at any point in the past was always financially related. Yes. So, for example, if when I used to refer people to them and I wouldn't get paid, I would call Tom Davis and say, hey, where's my check? And he was the guy I had to track down, usually.
Who was the other person from Georgia, the other person that you...
Deborah Lauer? How do you spell that last name?
I think it's just Lower.
And to your knowledge, like I know Matt Hawk has left and gone to Louisiana. Or Deborah Lauer, is she back in Clearwater? I mean, because they used to send her up here. Tom Davis, do you know him being sent anywhere?
No, I believe, as far as I know, Tom Davis is still in the Atlanta area, and Deb has gone back to Clearwater.
What are the people that were, like what's Jeannie Trahan doing now? And now that they're shut down, they lost their license or gave it up, what are the people that were involved here in Georgia? Where are they now, to your knowledge?
There's only a couple left, which is Tom and Jeannie. Most of the other people have, I mentioned, for example, Daryl has gone on to his other thing. Matt's gone down to Louisiana. All the rest of the staff have, I don't know who the latest staff members were, but they only had a handful of actual.
Yeah, why is Jeannie still here? Because she has gone everywhere.
She's a lifetime. Jeannie and Gary Smith and this guy Bobby Wiggins, they were the first people from Narconon, first Scientologists to win something called the Freedom Medal. If you saw Tom Cruise's big Freedom Medal of Valor thing. So the International Association of Scientologists gives out this Freedom Medal for the most dedicated of the dedicated people that are not in the Sea Org. And Jeannie Trahan is a Freedom Medal winner. So she goes and does anything she needs to do and anything she's asked to do because that is her only role in life, is to serve Narconon or serve Scientology through Narconon.
So that's my question. If that's her role and Georgia is no more, why is she still here? They just haven't found anywhere else to put her, or?
She's going to be relocated either to the new place in D.C., because Yvonne Rogers is from D.C., she's apparently going to be moving back up there. Jeannie Trahan will probably go with her, as well as Clark Carr. Jeannie may go back to L.A. She's got kids in Los Angeles. She could go work at the
So
celebrity.
she's just hanging out here until...
She's going through whatever records they have left to try and either contact people and get them into different centers because they do follow-up calls, and anybody who's relapsed, they can then get them into Michigan or get them down to Florida or get them somewhere else. So any records they have left, they're combing through to be able to see what can be salvaged out of it.
So they've
and then
lost
she'll
their
ship
license
out.
here in Georgia, but because their patients come from all over the country, they're just, yeah, you can't come to Georgia anymore, but hey, go to our other center,
Yes,
wherever.
yes. absolutely. And she'll be, and if she's not physically out of the state by, as of today, then she will be soon, either DC, Florida, or LA. Ojai, the new facility that they bought in Ojai, Larry Hagman's deal.
They're open one in Ohio?
Ojai, California.
Ohio, California.
Yeah, yeah, that's,
They grow a bunch of pot there.
yeah.
So they call it Ohio so high.
Oh.
Not that, I've read books about it.
I saw it on Discovery Channel.
I'm not a farmer.
Drugs Inc.
I'm not a street farmer.
It's not acid.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Luke, where's the Narconon, Louisiana? It's also called Narconon Riverbend Retreat. Is that North Shore of New Orleans, or is that, do you know where?
It's outside of Baton Rouge in Denham Springs.
Denham Springs, okay.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times.
So that's where we'd find Matt Hawk.
Yes.
Is Matt Hawk going to run, or are we going to have to serve Matt
No.
Hawk with a subpoena at
No.
Denham Springs? You don't know, or you?
I don't think he's going to run now.
Okay. Once he sees the flashing lights behind him, is that going to be a pivotal moment in his life where he leaves Scientology and comes to us? Or do we just have to wait and see?
I think you'd have to wait and see. From honestly, would he cooperate? Yes, I believe that he'll cooperate much more than Mary Reeser would. But I don't know how far he's going to step away from.
He's the one that you said you thought if we put the screws to him.
No, that was McGregor. That was Ken
McGregor in
McGregor.
Oklahoma, but Matt Hawk for here, I had mentioned to them before that.
Well, I think he'd be good for us too. I mean, why wouldn't Matt Hawk help our cause in Oklahoma as well, since everything was basically, there were no geographic lines in Narconon.
Ultimately, there's a connection between
Okay.
all of them. Enough digging is going to find the connection from all of them springing from Los Angeles.
So I want to talk to Matt Hawk as well, I'm thinking, right?
As far as how they deal with it and what he's been told, what has been handed to him from Oklahoma, that kind of stuff, the insurance hat that you found, that kind of stuff, absolutely, he would know some. He just wouldn't know how much of what is going on specifically in Oklahoma.
More so than he would know what was taking place here in Georgia.
Yes.
And I may have asked you this last time we met, but prior to Alex Davis getting there, and he even said he didn't have a title, he was just calling himself an insurance liaison. But was there anybody at that office that did that role prior to him being there, or would that have been
As you found, lots of people did it.
Right.
So by default, Mary was the one ultimately responsible for the income. So at the end of the day, if they didn't have money, she'd probably pick up the computer, see who could be billed. They even had one of their secretaries at one point, Jenny. I'm trying to remember her last name. She would go bill insurance.
Is she the one? What was the name of that lady that lives in Florida?
Florida now that we talked to, I don't know, we've got it.
Yeah, I've got it written down, but
So about Allison.
yes, who she had their housing company originally.
Allison Ridley, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think she had done billing at one point. What?
She did whatever she was told to do.
Yeah, exactly. They call it a HAYU org board. They have an organizing board or a chart, and Mary was famous for having a HAYU org board. In other words, if somebody's standing around and something needs to be done, she would just tell them to go do it, whether they knew how to or not, or whether it was their job or not.
So hey you for hey you go over and do
Yep.
this.
Now, who's Jenny?
Jenny was just she was Mary's daughter's friend.
She started a,
No,
the
this-
housing,
That's
Oh, that's
Alice.
Allison.
I'm sorry.
Jenny was the secretary.
In
Right.
Oklahoma.
No, in
No.
Georgia.
Here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I heard the word Oklahoma.
All right, I think I'm good on our end for now. I
Okay.
might pop in with something.
I want to run down some names here just to make sure the management structure that you gave me last time is still in place. Gary Smith, is he still Executive Director of Oklahoma?
Yes.
Okay. Is Mike Santamon still the Director of Legal Affairs and also runs the Office of Special Affairs?
Yes.
And Maureen is still a Financial Director?
Yes. Their files, their emails, by the way, are going to be encrypted. They use PGP software to encrypt their emails back and forth to Church of Scientology International, and many of their documents to Narconon International and Able International. Glenda Byrne, whoever the Director of Legal Affairs is at Narconon International these days, I'm not sure. But
GP, you said?
yes, because they required a PGP key. They may use something different now to encrypt it, but that was what they insisted upon before.
Now, I haven't gone, we have Gwinnett did all our computer imaging here. I haven't gone, they have their emails on a separate disk. I haven't gone through that yet, but was that just the Oklahoma location that was encrypting, or?
Primarily, they may find a few of them through there, but Oklahoma, because they were the largest, because they were so connected to the church, because of all the things that Oklahoma is to the Narconon network, they are much more careful.
I mean, he didn't we've already gotten the stuff back, and he didn't mention any of it. I was
Okay.
just curious.
Okay.
Maybe he decrypted it himself and.
It could, yeah, it could be an easy key to,
So you're saying only ours weren't encrypted?
and not all of it, just certain files are going to be encrypted, just because they require it.
Okay.
Would the computer that the files are on be able to unencrypt it? Is that a word? Or how would you be able to read it? If it's encrypted, how would the receiver of an email be able to read it?
Because they have to get their own PGP key, and then they basically verify each other on both ends. And so only the person who that email is sent to can read that document, because it, through the software, I haven't used it in forever, but through the software, you select which recipient, and so the encryption is only going to be valid for that recipient, unless you select multiple recipients in which they would both receive their own encryption code to view it.
The recipient sets up first time they receive an email, they set up an account, then they can go in and read it. They have an account ID and a password.
It's basically like an email that we get from the
Right,
insurance
yeah.
company whenever they
Yeah.
send us.
Secured.
Yes.
But Ryan Thorpe, I have him as a potential flip on this, but we haven't talked about him.
He no longer works there. When we met, he was still employed. He no longer works there. He's not sure what he's going to do. I've had a tiny bit of contact from him. He still considers himself a Scientologist, and he's not aware of everything that's going on. In fact, he said, I don't want to talk about anything Narconon or Scientology related. I just want to keep it friendly. So I think it's still a possibility, because he was the public registration supervisor and an executive at some point, where all the people that came into the facility and the income that his department was responsible for, he had a hand in it. Separate place did the insurance billing, but I'm assuming that he would have to know of information, for example, if somebody left on a Tuesday, but yet they're still billing through the end of the week, that kind of stuff. Because he would know who was coming and going, and how much money was coming in for the internal commission structure.
Where is he?
He's in Oklahoma.
Ryan?
Yeah.
I remember I remember you mentioning him the other day.
Yeah.
Ryan Thorpe. Okay. Did you say he was still with Narconon? He's left Narconon, but still lives in Oklahoma.
Right.
You know where to find him? You can give it to me?
Yeah, he lives on Lake Eufaula somewhere.
Okay, so let me get back to this. So I talked about Smith, both Santa Mons. Mike Goslin,
Yes.
still in his position,
Yes.
deputy exec. And Kathy, his wife, is still what they call senior director for production.
Yes.
But her job is more than that, because as a senior director for production, she is over the delivery or the clinical area, quote unquote,
Yes.
which is Wooten, which gets us to the practice for which they were billing.
Right. She's she's over what's called divisions 3, 4, and 5. Treasury, so all the insurance related stuff, the production itself or the delivery of the program, and then qualifications. And so all of those, the department of what they call the medical liaisons office is in division 5, and that's where Wooten would be in.
Okay, so Goslin was over that. So she's important, and her computer would be an important one to get, and her records would be as well, by virtue of where she is.
Yes.
Okay.
Even more important would be Michael Goslin, because he's the one who kept what they call their data files on things. major events that were happening in the organization week in, week out, so that when they go back and do any kind of trying to find out why something happened, up or down, catastrophe or not, something great, whatever, he has records of what was going on at that time, such as how many people blew the center, how many left that week, how many recoveries they had who had blown and then they've gotten back in, drugs found in the organization, how many staff tested positive on UAs. He's got all this. He's over all the hiring, the firing, the staff and student issues, such as problems, that kind of stuff. So he's got probably more files on the running of the organization than Kathy does.
Okay. Does that bleed over state lines, or would he just have Oklahoma? Because Oklahoma was a flagship, would their records also lend information to other states? I'm crossing state lines again, that's my purpose.
Right. Well, yeah, minimally from the fact of how many people come from out of state is one thing, but secondly from that, how much help that Arrowhead has offered to other centers in time of need, whether it's sharing information or sending money or whatever.
Okay, and then Derry Hallmark,
Derry Hallmark.
Director of Expansion.
Yeah, he's over all the income and promotion activities. When I say income, their Division 6 is the one that's primarily responsible for contacting people and getting them into the program. So that's where most of their income starts from. And then Division 3 does their insurance billing. So they work hand in hand, but yet they collect different sources of money.
Okay, and Rebecca Poole.
If there's any credit card fraud on applications, for example, falsifying credit applications and things like that, that would come from the Division 6 area, because his people would be the ones who actually apply for the cards for the people.
Okay, that's what Derry did, was got the cards
His people
His
would,
people.
yeah, get things financed to come in.
and then run the
things like
cards
that.
up, and then leave the people with the bill.
Right.
Okay. And Rebecca Poole.
Rebecca Poole did, she worked in the Treasury area. She was Treasury supervisor for a long time.
And then we talked about McGregor's. I've got a conference call with the commissioner on the Tornado Summit.
Okay.
So take it from the Oklahoma perspective. Is there a place I can make it?
Yep. There's a cube right in front of here.
Okay. Thanks.
Now, as to the personnel and records, how recent is your knowledge? Do you have first-hand knowledge of that anymore? Okay.
First-hand knowledge would be up until I left in basically January of 2011. So, because I was living in Oklahoma at the time, and my wife at that time was still employed by Narconon Arrowhead. So I had a lot of first-hand knowledge just being involved up till then.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, it has come from people who have either current or other recent contact. Either they were on staff there, or they were on staff at another Narconon and left, or something like that. People have contacted me separately.
And that's usually through email, or they're calling you, or what?
Yes, both.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Most of it's a phone call.
And that's including people who are currently employed at Arrowhead?
I don't have any. I don't have any recently from anybody currently employed at Arrowhead.
Okay, so
Just people who have left or spoken to somebody currently employed there.
okay, I see.
Are these people who have,
Thank you.
he said that, are these people who have left, or do they continue to be Scientologists? Or have they left the church, Narconon?
Most of the ones who contact me have left all. The ones that share information, yeah, because they're not allowed to contact me because I'm.
Okay, and these people, were they raised Scientologists, or was this something that they got involved in as an adult and then went, well, wait a second, this really doesn't?
Most of them were introduced to it through Narconon, and that's when they became Scientologists after they started working at Narconon. And then when they left, they said, screw it.
talking about individuals who are longtime members. We're talking about, I mean,
Maybe a decade at most, kind of thing.
right,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's not a culture for them as far as we were talking, you know, Baptists, you go to church on Sunday
Right.
morning and that's just, you know, it's from birth all the way up. So they're not, it's like their whole family is not Scientologists.
Some of them are, and the level of indoctrination is, and the amount of the thought pattern that changes is something that's difficult to grasp, as far as everything that you think and do is related to Hubbard's writing. And so if there's an occurrence, if somebody got hit by a bus, they go, okay, what did he do to they go pull it in? What did he do to cause that bus to hit him? So everything is so deeply ingrained that that's what your thought process becomes of. You must then check with some scripture that Hubbard wrote or talked about to solve everything in your life. So even those people who weren't raised in it, but just by virtue of living in that culture for a number of years, 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, whatever, they do adopt that as part of their daily life and every day, day in and day out.
Okay.
And it takes sometimes a long time to break that mentality. That's why, for example, when we were talking about this guy, Ryan Thorpe, he may have left there 6 months ago or whatever, but he's not to the point of even, they're ingrained to where you can't even look online at negative information about Narconon or Scientology. You're heavily punished for even reading a story that's negative.
Heavily punished how?
Threats, it's mostly mental constraints. Threats of, well, we'll have people turn against you. You'll be barred from receiving your next service. You're not going to be able to participate in functions with your friends and family because you've done this. You're going to have to do manual labor. In some cases, you're going to have to donate a ton of money to make up for what you've done.
They send you to like a retraining type thing, don't you, that they make you pay for?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it all depends on what the perceived offense is and what is happening at that time. But their punishment could be any number of things. But it's knowing that you will be punished for falling outside the lines, and you are continuously put on their e-meter, their primitive lie detector. And so when you have a reaction, if somebody asks you a question and you're holding these electrodes, the cans, I call them, when you're holding them, and they say, did you steal the $5? And immediately there's a reaction because you stole the $5, then they go, okay, there it is. And so they know that that is going to happen to them if they do one of those things that they know that they're not allowed to do. So it's building this barrier of mental constraints before they can even consider something. I don't know if that
Like that,
helps.
Ryan Thorpe guy you mentioned, is another one. Did he leave there on his own, or did they push him out?
He left on his own. There's another guy, Mike Kent, actually, another guy who left on his own. He was just what they call a registrar, an intake guy, because they're not making any money individually.
So they're leaving because the church can't, or the Narconon can't afford to pay them anymore.
Right.
Okay.
They've dwindled down.
So it's not any issues with their belief system as of yet. It's just financially they're at a place of business, and the place, like I would leave.
Right.
My checks were bouncing from here.
Yeah, he's got 2 kids, and so that was his primary motivation: is I have to find something else to care for my family, and I'll figure out the rest of the stuff as I go. And as people, through time and distance, as they get more separated from it, then they start to realize it's okay to look, it's okay to read, it's okay to investigate, and that's from personal experience as well. It takes. I mean, my heart was literally pounding at the first time I clicked. Rena Weinberg, who used to be the president of ABLE, when I tried to find out what happened to her. She disappeared at the end of '06. Pounding because I was not allowed to look on the internet. Just type in, click on any website that may have negative information about Narconon or Scientology. And just doing that one thing was like a huge first step through, oh my gosh, now it's okay to look. And these guys, most of them are still in that phase of, no, can't look.
Did she disappear? Going on. This stuff fascinates me. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay.
But did she disappear like Miscavige's wife has disappeared? Like
Yes.
she's still part of the church?
Yes.
Okay. She didn't disappear like she left the church and got away.
No. No, I spoke to her husband. I called up Abel to ask for her, and her husband answered the phone, and he hung up on me.
Just because you asked for it?
Because I introduced myself. I recognized his voice. He doesn't
Oh, you're talking about
answer
here
the phone.
recently, since you've been excommunicated
Yes,
or whatever?
yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about when you were looking for her or whatever.
No, well, that was a previous conversation that I had with him, and he said, I can't tell you where she is. He knew where she was, but he couldn't tell me. And then since then, I called up and said,
What is
hey,
the purpose of that? Like, why is Miss Gavish's wife missing?
the entire thing is about control. So if somebody is going against the grain, they believe their spiritual salvation is at stake, and if they don't participate or go along with it, then they're going to lose their eternity. That's literally the thought that they have. They're going to lose their eternity, and they're not going to get what Hubbard promised they would get if they don't comply with these orders. And that they have to go through punishment because they must have done something wrong, and so they accept it at first.
I mean, I get the mind control part of why somebody would go into hiding for so long, but why is Miss Gavish, why is he hiding his wife? What is the purpose for him in hiding, and his wife being disappearing for 10 years or 15 years or however long it's been?
My personal thought is just because she knows too much, and
He doesn't want people
he doesn't want her to be accessed by anybody. Same thing with Rena Weinberg, and people that start to then question him and what he's doing, then he'll basically make them disappear within the organization.
Okay.
The Arrowhead facility, would they have any off-site storage of records or anything relevant?
They shouldn't. I think they were trying to sell that McAllister facility since they closed down the medical detox.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know for sure. There may be some records down in McAllister,
Okay.
but that would be the only other place that I could think of. Occasionally they send client charts. They call them folders. Occasionally they'll send charts to Los Angeles to be inspected.
Okay.
So there could potentially be a few of them in Los Angeles. And then all of the reports that they send, the weekly reports that they send to Los Angeles, they should have duplicate copies of out there.
Okay.
But they do a good job of not finding those when asked for.
And we'll get you a map to actually get us the exact locations, but you said there was like a warehouse behind the main facility?
Yes, yeah, it was a pool that was filled in with cement, and they actually built a warehouse on top of it, and that's where their archives are.
Okay.
So it's probably 30 by 60, if I'm guessing.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll take it, we'll include that.
Now what, we didn't get to we didn't know that they have like a storage trailer out in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of stuff would we have missed in there? Would it have been just old patient records?
It would have been, yeah, patient records with notes as far as what was happening. Like if you were...
The same thing we did get, but just older ones from 2005
More than likely.
or whatever.
Yeah, more than likely the older ones. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming you would have seen, for example, notes about Susie getting drunk and sleeping with staff member B, kind of stuff like that. It would have been more of that.
Okay.
Well, what do you consider old? When does it transfer out to the archives?
Depends. Usually within 12 months, it'll be
Okay.
transferred out to archives. Yeah. If they believe there's a shot at bringing the person back within a few months, they'll keep it somewhat active.
Okay. But their main records, their current records are going to be in the main facility in the office of, what you said, the treasurer's office?
All over, depending on what records you're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah. But specifically insurance records, yes, should be in one of several of the insurance offices and the finance director's office.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying earlier. For one student here
You'll
in Georgia,
You have the
7
SONA
different
records,
files.
or the treatment records, and then you have classwork records, and then you have the financial
Yeah,
records, and then you have
Their
the...
ethics
their
files.
sauna treatment, I mean, you're saying Arrowhead was much more organized than ours was,
Yes.
but their sauna location here was at off-site. It wasn't on where their classroom work was done. So they have a folder for their sauna work and a folder for their classroom work, just separate folders. And they have a folder in the director's office where their intake paperwork was done. And then there's a folder in the treasury office where all their insurance information was in that one. And then there was a folder in the insurance liaison's office for all of the claims and payments that they've received. So, I mean, literally for one student, you're going to find
5 or
6,
6.
7, different records, and they're all going to be in different places. It was a cluster whenever we got in there.
One thing good is because they were having to supply records to some of the insurance companies that had requested, they had combined the records that we were like,
Well, and that was
oh.
part of this Alex Davis that had been brought in February. Part of his job was to go through and he was trying to organize this stuff, so.
He was trying to do
This was
audits on the
organized.
phones.
I mean, it was a cluster when we got in there, and he even said, you're lucky you came after I got here, was what he said. So, if we had come in there when he was there, we probably would have been there for 2 or 3 days. So, I mean, and there was one office where they kept the books, the reading, the Hubbard books that, I mean, it was floor to ceiling of boxes for probably 20 feet, and we were climbing over, just to see if there was anything in there that we were interested in, but
It was
we were having to
basically
climb
just
over and
classrooms.
stuff. Yeah, it was nothing we were even working with, but.
One thing that you'll find in Oklahoma is they had implemented a treatment tracking system. So just like they've implemented trying to do electronic records for medical and healthcare in general. So they have been trying for a number of years. So they actually have at least start and stop dates of when they started and completed a different phase of the program along. So there should be some good computer records in Oklahoma showing specifically when they were involved in a particular service, or if they were sent over to the ethics department because they were caught staying up past lights out or whatever too many times or something. So they should have that tracking system in place, more detailed.
Okay. Now, were they doing that when you were there, or was this information you received later?
Both.
Okay, so that they've continued this effort, and it's likely more electronic at this point is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it should be. It should. I mean, we'd even had, we had brought companies out to build us our own specific thing at one point, and they wound up doing some variation of that. They may have upgraded the software since then, rather than just doing a basic attempt.
Okay.
Just because from when we did our search warrant, it was, when we got in there, it was nothing like what we were expecting, so I'm just going to ask some questions to try and possibly help you guys out. But as far as seasoned computers, is there specific ones that they would want to go to? I mean, because when we did ours, we thought there was going to be a handful of offices that we may seize a computer from, and we get in there and there's 20 offices, and I mean, there was a lot more personnel than we were expecting to be in there.
Right.
So, like I said, we were expecting to hit a director's office, an insurance office, and a treasury office. But, I mean, there were so many, there was IT and all that other stuff. So,
Yeah.
Are there any specific computers that they should look for as opposed to others?
Yeah, there's a lot. For example, they have a whole other part, their Division 2, that gets what they call retreads, people that have completed the program and then relapse and come back in, and they charge them half price to come back. They have records where they're on their Div 2 regs, Division 2 registrars, who then contact these people after the success department sends a flag and says, hey, so-and-so is not doing well, contact them to get them back in. So there's literally records in every division that have pertinent information when it comes to, especially if they had insurance. They go, okay, well, this guy was here then, or it shows that he was contacted by this person, or this doesn't match up, and they billed him for this, but yet he went to Med Detox somewhere else, or wherever. There's going to be lots of information all throughout. There's probably 40 offices.
But if we had to prioritize, where would we go?
To prove insurance fraud.
Treasury.
Treasury?
Yeah, there's like 3 Treasury offices, 4 maybe,
Okay.
that are the primary ones, and then some of the executive offices and the finance director's office, that kind of stuff. So it bring it down to more like 10.
Okay. I'm just curious, who, you said there's probably a lot of information in their emails that we're going to want to look at.
Mhm.
Do you know who their email hosting service is? Is it an internal thing, or do they actually use someone else?
I don't know who it is now, to be honest with you. I don't know. they had switched up. They use Earthlink forever, but I think they got away from Earthlink. So I'm not sure.
So they probably should provide their own internal IP, internal email service.
Could be.
Would their IT staff be on site?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, most of them would be.
okay.
How many employees are working there now, to your knowledge, since?
Less than 100 now. It was 220 or something like that. There's probably about 80 there now.
And how many students are they down to?
40.
And they have the capability of housing how many?
250. Sorry for the hesitation, but one of their IT guys committed suicide in 2009 on staff.
Oh.
So that was one of the, he helped, for example, to try and create the treatment tracking system. He did all these other things. So he was there something. He was in 2008 or 2009, something like that. So I don't know. Another one of their IT guys is located in Turkey. Levent Onart is his name.
Well, he may be kind of hard to track down.
Yeah.
Let's go try.
Yeah.
Y'all can send a few of those out there.
Derry Hallmark also does some IT stuff, so he's one of the names that I had given. Even though he works in the registration area, he also does some IT stuff for them. Doug Schotters also does IT. Doug Schotters is not currently employed there. He used to be. I had received a threat from him. I saw the emails because when we fessed up to cheating on our counseling certification exams, his wife was one of the people named as also having not done it correctly, and so he sent me an email saying that he had an IT degree now and that he had a lot of money and financial support from his family, and that he would make sure that I paid if I didn't leave his wife out of it. So I saw those emails and I forwarded them on to the counseling certification group at the time, and their attorneys have it. But so from that I know that he has done some IT work for them, even though he's not there. He lives in McAllister. His wife is still an employee there as a case supervisor. Talon Schotters is her name. But Doug Schotters is, he's, without a doubt, he's their main IT guy now.
Okay. Nestor, do you have anything on the medical records or?
No, I think we just need that map, and we know the offices we need to go to, and that's to get the records, and then hopefully the communications on where there's no records.
Well, yeah, now the treatment records themselves would be in a different spot. Those would mostly be in the case supervisor's area. That's actually upstairs. They call it the Ivory Tower. It's an upstairs area above the Treasury offices. It's like one stairway that goes up there.
When people are completed, or is, okay.
Well, as they're going through, they actually call them CSs. They CS the folders sometimes on a daily basis, depending on what part of the program they're going through. So the folders get sent up and then back down routinely. So many of the folders will be located in there. So many of the folders will be in the course room. Many of them will be in the sauna area. But the case supervisor's area will have lots of folders, a ton of them.
And that'll have current patients or older patients?
Current patient records,
Yeah,
yes.
you know,
Where are their older, former patients' records?
The older ones are going to be in the storage building out back.
Archives.
Well,
Yeah.
Those that have completed
what about the ones that have
program will be-
completed? Do they house completed students? You said they hold them for about 12 months, so.
Most of those will be, there's an additional storage area in the CS office upstairs.
Okay.
So they do have a bunch of records there.
So if I finished in, the end of October or the end of September,
Right.
it's not going to automatically go out to the archives.
Right.
They're going to house it in this, case manager's office or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the interesting test might be that we go in and we get the records of who they say is there now, but we find out who is there exactly right now, and then we see what the billing records reflect right then too.
Mhm.
So then, because if they're not there, then we find out
That's easy.
that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like on as an example, the one filed where
Yeah, I was mentioning that.
the records show, you know, got on the bus, headed to Michigan at 3:25, left him at the bus stop, and then they continued to bill for 2 or 3 months.
I think that's a pretty good one there.
Yeah, and that, I mean, and that's what I was telling you guys earlier. One, y'all got a bigger location and that's had a lot more go on, but, you know, with this non-prosecution agreement that came out from the Gwinnett DA, I mean, that, me and Sherry met about this a couple weeks ago, that, as far as I'm concerned, it totally changed my look on the investigation. I'm gonna put 6, 7, 8 examples together, forwarded it to that DA, and you know, we're gonna let him handle it however he wants. I mean, that's,
It's such a
there's
weird
no point in
thing,
us
so-
putting, you know, thousands of man hours into it for him to do something like that, as far as I'm concerned.
To have you guys mentioned as a party in here, but not being a sending.
Well,
party.
Sherry was in
I didn't even
training.
know about it.
Yeah, their attorneys called us asking for,
A comment?
no, Narconon's attorneys called us asking for
Wanting all the files back.
wanting all
And
the
I said,
files
what the hell
back.
are you talking about?
And we told them basically what they could go do with
Oh,
themselves,
wow.
and they wrote back and said, well, we're out of it. And, you know, we got this class action lawsuit that we're dealing with, and we're gonna have we're expecting this production of records order to come from the judge soon, so.
And I got right on the phone with
You've
Danny.
been talking to
I
Danny?
got right on the phone. Danny,
Yeah.
what's going on?
I called Paul and said, hey, what, you know, do you know anything about it? And Paul said, I don't know anything about it, you'd have to talk to Danny. We called Danny and he said, oh yeah, we signed it, you know, 3 weeks ago.
But it doesn't have anything to do with the individuals now. That is strictly, I said, yay.
Well, then we asked him for a copy of it, and
And
he
he
never
still
sent
hasn't-
that.
We got this,
Yeah, we
yeah.
got it from you. So,
Oh, wow.
I mean, like I said,
In your statutes, you can only charge the individuals with insurance fraud anyway.
right, which was, I mean, that was, our investigation was going after the individuals in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, you can't put a business in jail.
Yeah, so,
If
but,
you'd like to, you know, just.
Like to,
get all
but
of
you
them
can't, you
sold.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
stuff it in the cell.
I mean, so like, we knew he was planning on doing this non-prosecution agreement, which we didn't have a problem with because we had discussed some terms for it. And then
Which you were
To
part
see-
of,
Right, to
Right.
see, but none of those terms
or in
are
there.
in there.
are in the agreement.
And that's why I'm saying, and I sent, Sherry wasn't here whenever you sent it
Yeah,
to
I
me.
remember.
And so, I mean, I sent Sherry an email while she was at her training, and I just said, look, you know, this
Because
is a
apparently
problem. And-
our media guy got a call. and
Well,
so-
because Narconon came right out and, I mean, hell, I would have too if I was in. They came right out and made a statement, said, hey, we're done, and
Yeah.
nothing happened to us, it really wasn't our
Yeah,
fault.
exactly, and so I guess our media person was contacted, and naturally, he didn't know, because I normally keep him in the loop, so he was actually shocked that I hadn't said anything. So he calls my supervisor, who comes over to me, and I'm like, you know what you're
Well,
talking
and
about.
that was another thing I told Sherry in the email too, was, you know, the commissioner might be getting calls about this, because I know our complainant's mom, you know,
Oh,
who
she
was,
went back on going,
well,
this
she
is,
was on the news all happy when we did our search warrant, and then this came out and she
She
went
says,
back
"I'm
and
a
being
fault."
pissed off. So
Yeah.
that's why I was telling Sherry that, you know, because we're named in the agreement.
Right.
I don't know
And
if the
as soon
commissioner knew
as
anything about it or
My
what. but-
supervisor came to me, he was like, well, can you handle this? And I think that's when I reached out to you to ask you if you had a copy of this, and you
Yeah.
said no. And my supervisor was like, well, I need you to go out and get a copy from the DA, see what's going on. And so I did just that. I went to Danny and I was like, what the? You know, and he was
But yeah,
like,
so, I mean, as far as, and this is what I was telling Paul, I agree that I think it's a multi-jurisdictional issue and that feds should be handling it, but, you know, Jackie and us have run that route with the AUSAs in our region, and it's just not, it's not gonna happen.
and that's what I was going to
So-
tell Paul. I'm not the one really to talk to. It's the AUSAs here. And their stance is, if they cannot go after a company here, they have to go after someone here in order to start knocking down the doors of other Narconons in other areas. So that's what I was trying to explain to Paul, and I know Kevin has explained it to us because we were all at the same meeting. And that's basically their stance. Since the DA is going after Narconon here, then our hands were tied because we can't charge the same charges.
now, during our meeting, you had talked about, or they talked about going to justice.
I don't think he did it, but I don't know.
Right?
Because naturally that wouldn't have anything to do with me.
Right.
So
But you
I
said
don't-
that after our meeting, they called you 2 or 3 weeks later and said, close your case, we're not
Yep,
doing anything.
and that was
So-
the call I got. I was coming from I was actually at Firearms, and when I left, I picked up the phone, checked my messages, and that was the answer I got, which was close the case. And so then my supervisor followed it up, calling me, and he was like, hey, did you get the message? You know, I met with Glenn them, close the case. I was like, okay. Well, I left it open, just in case something new developed, because I did call Glenn. And he was like, you get my message? I was like, yeah. I was like, well, if something else develops. And he was like, yeah, if something new develops that we can actually pursue, then, by all means.
Well, I still say that everything they billed, because they did not have
I
medical
agree.
providers, is fraud.
Right, their stance with us was that, well, their attorneys anyway, was that
There was a
basically
contract for
well,
the,
it was the overbilling and poor management is what caused, that's the only thing where they think there was, obviously they didn't call it fraud, but where they feel like,
there was an issue.
yeah, it was when people left and then they weren't communicating with MedPro quick enough, and so therefore there was overpayment, which they were saying, well, we'll return all the overpayment. Well, as far as I'm concerned, everything they received was overpayment because every bill they submitted was fraudulent. Obviously, they didn't admit to that, but, that's, on our end, that's how we looked at it. That, they were looking at it as everything they were overpaid was what they needed to return, and I was looking at it as everything you received
Correct.
needed to be returned.
Depending on which AUSA you work with in the Northern District, you have some who would say, no, they fraudulently billed under these doctors' names. If they didn't have doctors to bill
They
under.
stole the identity
they
to
would
get
not-
the NPI
exactly.
number, and then, so
Exactly.
everything is fraudulent.
But then you have some, like Chris Huber, the claim, who would say, well, did they provide the service? It's not the point that they provided the service. The point is, it's
But
in-
The
there
doctor
wasn't
they
a
billed
doctor
for
there to
didn't
provide the
the
service, so,
But their point is, if something
Something was-
took place.
right. I agree, I know, I've dealt
Which
with
is
those.
what Narconon stance was.
But I'm working with another AUSA who's totally different. I have a case similar, which they didn't bill on the doctor's name, but they had to have a certain, what they call a certain team in place that had certain credentials. Well, this team did not have those credentials. So now everything they billed is fraudulent billing.
Well, but the reason I bring all that up is I was just saying is, on y'all's side, you're dealing with a different region of AUSAs,
Correct.
and so good luck. You're probably gonna have a better chance of getting them involved. Plus,
We'll see.
you got a bigger organization than we had. Ours was, and Lucas can tell you because he's been at both. Ours was nothing like what you're gonna find out there. I mean, ours was a sham.
From what I understand, Oklahoma's a compound. This was in
This was
a
in
business
rental
center,
office.
and it was 2 or 3 units of a one-story
Their sauna
business
location was a mile
condominium.
down the road.
Yeah.
Their housing was, 10 miles down the road at an apartment complex.
Yeah, my understanding is Arrowhead actually used to be this whole hotel resort that the state owned.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's quite a complex. I'm sure we'll find some
Yes.
interesting things there.
What time are y'all leaving tomorrow? Are y'all gonna come back up here tomorrow, or do y'all have other interviews to do? or-
We've got all 3 on different flights. I was hanging around for a number of reasons. One is I didn't know if there was anyone else you're not leaving a little later, aren't you?
11.
Okay. If there was somebody else that you thought that we needed to talk to or get pinned down on some statements, I wanted to leave tomorrow morning for that. Or if you thought that the AUSA, who you're dealing with on this case, would want to hear some of this from, that they might, you've heard probably a lot today.
Yeah.
It's probably been eye-opening. I would hope that it has a
Well-
multi-jurisdictional potential here.
Correct, which they were aware of that before. Everything that was discussed today, the AUSAs were aware of that before. We all sat in the same meeting with the DA,
Even the
and-
DA tried to convince them that it was
Correct.
their ballgame. They didn't
Correct.
want it, so.
And that's because for them, the way they explained it is for our AUSAs here in the Northern District, they would have to have someone that they're going after here. And since the DA is already going after someone, he's already actively pursuing his case, there was nothing for us to pursue here in the Northern District. So had we had assumed this case, per se,
Which we tried to get them to do.
yeah, that was before my time. If we had this case, then yes, we could actively pursue other areas. And this is what the AUSAs were saying here in the Northern District. But because there's nothing for us to actively pursue here, then it's out of our hands. So my suggestion to you is possibly get the AUSAs in Oklahoma on board.
Here's the other part. The Northern District is so small as far as AUSAs versus the crime in the jurisdiction. I mean, they have a minimum. They won't even discuss a case with you unless it used to be $4 million. I don't know what it is now. Or it has to involve a number of people.
Well, that was one of their first questions when we met.
How much money?
How much money? So I don't know what the parameters are for the USAs in Oklahoma versus what they are here in Georgia. But I would think it would be smaller.
It is. We've got a very comfortable arrangement with the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District and Western District. We haven't, and now actually we have our first case with the Eastern District. And the Eastern District is geographically wherein Arrowhead falls. So that would be ideal. And of all the 99, 93, 94, 99 districts, they have the smallest caseload of any U.S. Attorney's office in the United States.
Well,
So
plus, I don't think they're going to have any problem meeting any monetary requirements.
they don't have, neither one has said, none of the three in Oklahoma have said it's got to be $5, because we've said, what's your threshold?
Yeah.
And we'll be
$5.
more than happy to put our case to you on a silver platter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, if you can get the feds on your area to jump on, then
we will put our case together. We're having all the documents
I'll
that
drive
we
it out there too.
seize in the search warrant are being scanned right now, and then I'm going to bake stamp them. So I can ship that CD off and our case report and everything else, if you can get a USA on board. We tried.
Yep.
The DA tried, and they said no.
Okay.
We even said go to justice.
I think we can, and the commissioner's behind that 100%. Going forward, Nestor, you and Lucas, to me, are the ones that kind of drive this, and the others, but you're kind of you said you wanted to wait and see, wait and have all the payment documents and all the payment records from the insurance companies before we move ahead. Is that, what are you looking at there?
Well, we wanted to see what we could get from them. We have the claims. I mean, we're really, we have enough from the insurance companies now I think we're ready to go look for records. So I don't think we
Start analyzing.
Yeah.
So physically look,
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at serving subpoena time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Are you going to serve a subpoena?
We're gonna just go over there and start beating people up.
he's talking about
Search.
interviewing folks.
Well, or the warrant.
I started to say,
Yeah.
as far as records at Narconon,
Yeah.
I highly suggest
Search warrant.
a search
Yeah.
warrant.
To get the records before interview.
Right.
Okay,
Because then
and
they
do we-
know that you'll...
Because
have
they'll
access.
scrutinize and only give you what they want to give you.
Well, and
and-
they'll also, the one out here was known for tampering with them, so.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which we've got tampered records, so,
Okay, yeah, I said subpoena, I was thinking subpoena Dukas Teagle on the Dennis case. On the other case, we have a search warrant. Now, we need to do that contemporaneously. This is a question. Do we have to do that contemporaneously, or should we do it contemporaneously with serving a warrant on MedPro? And that's been my question all along, is what's their culpability here? Should we get their stuff as well?
I would assume you need it, because especially if you're looking at multiple jurisdictions, MedPro has worked with more than just Oklahoma and Georgia.
Will the records we get, though, from Eufaula, create no need for MedPro's records. Since we're going after insurance, since we're,
What we found is, and Kevin, you've looked at these documents more than I have, what you will find is the communication of Narconon sending the information to MedPro, MedPro sending a weekly report on who it is that they're billing for that week.
And then Narconon basically receives a check.
And then Narconon receives the check.
so Narconon fraudulently making
they're
the
doing
claim, asking MedPro to make a claim.
Here's my client. Narconon says, here's my client's information. MedPro takes that information, goes to the carrier, and says, they're going to be enrolled in the Narconon services. How many days are you going to allow us? The company will come back and say, we'll give you 14 days or 24 days or whatever. And MedPro turns around, sends that back up to Narconon, correct me if I'm wrong, and says, you have 24 days. At the end of that 24 days, we will get another
which is what caused
authorization of treatment.
billing for Sundays and all that stuff that's what Narconon's defense.
So MedPro then, so it's Narconon to MedPro, MedPro to
The carriers.
by a weekly report to Narconon as a clarification, then to the carrier, then payment back by the carrier to MedPro, then
No.
money to
No,
Narconon.
payment to Narconon.
Payment directly to Narconon?
Yep.
And
Okay.
I believe in Oklahoma you'll find that Narconon billing directly. I don't believe that they're still sending all of their billing through MedPro. Unless you have other records that indicate otherwise. I think their whole agenda was to create their own internal billing system
That
so that they
MedPro
did
taught
not
them.
have to.
MedPro taught them how to bill
How to
for
bill.
it.
Right.
They started doing it
Right.
themselves.
Do I need MedPro's records if I get Narconon default?
I don't think you do, because
Everything that
everything that
MedPro
MedPro has is coming from Narconon,
and MedPro
and
sent
then
them the status of the...
that information is going from MedPro to the insurance company. So you're either going to have it on the insurance side, or you're going to have it on
I don't,
Narconon's side.
and
That's my
just,
opinion,
my
but
personal opinion, I don't think you're going to need to do a search warrant on MedPro, but a subpoena to the folks from MedPro for,
To subpoena
to
the
interview them.
records.
Yeah, well, all their records, like I said, I think you're going to have all their records from, the way we had it, they basically had a form that they filled out with all the patient's information, their member ID number, it had all their insurance card information on it, and then they just scanned it and emailed it to MedPro. MedPro would take that and get approval from the insurance companies. If the insurance companies always dealt with MedPro. If they, wanted a request for medical records to substantiate the claim, they went to MedPro, and MedPro would call Narconon and say, send us proof of the records for these dates, and they would send that to MedPro, and MedPro would forward that on to the insurance company. So, like everything that they have, and all the communication between them, I think you'll be able to find at your Narconon
because
location.
it's going to be all through email, and it's going to be all through,
Right. I think subpoenaing the people at MedPro for statements.
because it should match.
Interview with them, as far as, the way I see it falling on our end, I think everybody that worked at Narconon is going to point fingers at Mary Reiser. Mary Reiser is going to point fingers at MedPro. So when it's all going to come down to what I think truly happened is people weren't there and she kept billing for them and telling MedPro that they were there. That's why I think you're going to need a statement from MedPro saying,
We only did for what we were,
who did you communicate with? Who told you that John Doe was still here for these period of time when they weren't there? You need to find out who was telling MedPro to go ahead and bill for patient X when patient X wasn't there anymore.
Understood.
And so, and then like I said, I think that's just a statement issue as opposed to a search warrant issue. I mean, I think you're going to be able to find everything.
So we need to get down to Pittsburgh County,
if
again.
y'all want to come back up here tomorrow and to discuss any type of strategy, come on in.
The commissioner wants
Make sure you bring your costume.
He wants a,
No.
and I've given him a calendar, kind of, in the springboard of which is this meeting to brainstorm with y'all on where we go from here and when we go down to Eufaula and MedPro and all that. But I think I'm clear on that. I don't know, Mark, am I missing something?
I think we got it.
Well, that's why I was saying, I mean, we've got MARTA, which takes you straight to the airport, so if y'all want to come here and we can brainstorm in the morning, and then y'all are more than, I don't know if there's anybody else they should talk to while they're here that you're aware of.
Not that I'm immediately aware of as far as this particular stuff, no.
Okay, but we need to go to Ithaca and talk to, or somebody, I need to get Eric.
Right.
Eric Tenorio. He's pivotal in this. I mean, not pivotal, but he's important in this
Yeah.
thing, to buttress you.
Yeah.
What's his, Eric's the one that was on the show with you, right?
Right.
Okay.
Is there a third person or fourth person or other
But
than?
did he do much with insurance dealings or?
Only early on, as far as when he was working in Michigan and he was getting emails back and forth from Gary Smith about how they're doing the insurance and trying to work it out to then send more information back to Michigan, and then Eric was down in Florida, and so then he was helping Suncoast down in Florida. So, I mean, yeah, and now he's in nursing school, so he's even got more of an understanding or grasp of what he was involved in before medically to say, well, they're claiming this, but yet it doesn't fit in that category.
Is he getting any contact from former people, or are you really the one kind of spearheading it and he's forwarding them on to you? Or?
He is a little bit. He has more from Michigan, just because he worked so much in Michigan, and I mean, they're investigating another death in Michigan at the detox center. So he had some contact from Battle Creek Police Department up there. But it's been some people contacting him, some people contacting him.
Is there, just for our end here in Georgia, is there anything in Oklahoma that we would be interested in as far as helping? Because, like we've been saying, we're trying to prove our case against what appears to be Mary. Is there anything in Oklahoma that's going to help our case against her?
Maybe times where Mary has gone out to Arrowhead specifically to do additional training. She potentially could have gone to Arrowhead to get the initial insurance training hat. I don't know if that's something that happened or not, but it's certainly likely.
How would we prove that? How would we?
There should be a record of it at some point, or a
Training
report.
record.
Yeah, because they document who came out when and for what and that kind of stuff. Whenever there's some kind of visitor like that.
Well, with that information, it would be hard for her to say, I don't know, I didn't do this, I don't know anything about it, when she in fact has the training and the credential or whatever that they called it to do this specific task.
Right. And it may or may not be there. There may or may not be some kind of record of that. That part I'm not sure about.
Okay, so there's no one else for us to talk to here. So I would say probably Eric and then Matt would be two important people to talk with.
Yeah.
And then the others will work out.
I've got to leave because I've got another
Oh,
meeting.
okay.
Thank you so much. If
you.
you want to come back in the morning, y'all are more than welcome to come back and we can strategize and
Absolutely.
figure it out and
Okay.
share with you what we've seen.
He's actually thrown out, and this part Kevin can do, thrown out some more names tonight. And I would just like
But, I mean, we'll be more than happy to show you that some, what we found, and if that would help y'all as far as what you're looking for when you get there, whatever.
Okay.
Whatever y'all need, let us know, but I
Thank you.
got another meeting, sorry.
Thank you.
And
Bye, Kevin.
See,
I just want on the names, because what I found is, once one person starts talking, others feel empowered
Exactly.
and comfortable in talking, and will probably be surprised.
Certainly.
do you think Tom Davis is going to be sent to another location like Gene?
I don't think so.
So what's he?
I think he's based here.
Just start his own business, doing whatever,
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna,
working in the real world?
yeah. I don't even know if he's going to do that. I think he helped out with Narconon by default because Mary was starting it and she asked him to help. Most of the people here in Atlanta that were church members that wound up working with Narconon was because Mary was doing it, kind of thing, not because they really felt a desire to work with Narconon.
But, and Jeannie Trahan's still in the church?
Yes.
Alex Davis is still in the church?
I don't know Alex.
Tom is Alex's father.
Tom Davis, yes.
Alex was their insurance liaison that had just been brought on whenever.
Tom's still in the church.
Right. I believe Alex is too. He told us that he had just started February and that he was only there because he's the son of his parent. He wouldn't tell if it was his mother or father or what their name was, but his parent worked there, and that he had worked at another doctor's office and had, he had experience in insurance billing. So they had asked him to come on to help out.
But you don't think that he's going to be any, right now, there's no expectation of value?
Out of Alex?
Yeah.
Only because he started in February and most of our investigation pertains to prior to that. I think he understands their billing. I think he's a Scientologist, and I think he didn't tell it to us, but I think he's like Jeannie. I think he is a person that gets moved around to fix stuff. But I have no way of proving any of that.
Are these red volumes and green volumes exactly that? Are they red books and green books?
Mm-hmm.
So when we go down there, should we be looking for these?
No, that's the Hubbard writings.
Okay, so
Those can be found anywhere.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
no value to us?
No.
Well, then when can either Mark or I will be in contact with you, because the sheriff is going to want to get a schematic up on the wall and
Right.
kind of do the detail of that. And I think you're already thinking in your mind on how we're going to do that.
Yeah, I got a pretty good idea where we need to go. He told us all about the interior building and
And then
everything.
the Wooten's office is remote, correct? Would we have to hit Wooten's office as well?
His main office, they keep, anything that he does for them should be in the facility though.
In the facility?
Yeah,
would be
because
at
his
the-
Jenks office, his medical practice in Jenks is completely separate.
Does he drive down from James?
He had a houseboat that he would spend the weekends on the lake and then do his practice during the week, and then he'd come down and see patients on Friday at Narconon, spend the weekend on the lake, and then go back on Sunday night and practice during the week.
Jackie, I think we need to recover that houseboat as evidence.
I would like to take everything.
Now, should we, I'm looking at their assets too and be okay, but we're going to have to, I don't want to go in and get all the documents and then have them siphon off, $18 million of ill-gotten gains and send a...
That's very real. For them to be able to claim that within the last 2 years, they wiped out all their reserves. I'm sure they would try and do that and move. So you'd have records of if they did wire it, but
So we need
get rid of it.
to
Freeze them at least.
freeze their
Yeah.
BOK accounts. That was BOK,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the local Eufaula branch. I used to be able to walk in there with anybody, as long as it said Narconon on it, I could cash any check at local Bank of Oklahoma branch because because so much business is done there from them, and so they're holding so many deposits for them that it was like if you're an executive, then everything was good because it's just the way it was in Eufaula.
Are they with their low patients? Are they not paying employees? Are they bleeding money like the one here in Georgia was?
Yes, they've been hemorrhaging for.
So those reserve accounts, the 3 reserve accounts we talked about last time, are they diving into those now, do you think, or?
They're definitely diving into them, but they're also pulling money from other places. So, and I bet they're not paying their rent, the Social Betterment Properties Incorporated.
But that's church, when they pay their rent, they're just basically
Right.
sending money to the church another way.
Right, so they're finding ways to cut down on expenses. They've let go of a bunch of staff and gave them free outs. Say, look, if you thought about leaving, now's the time to do it. Because if you break your contract with Narconon, then they also try and give you a freeloader's debt for any training you did with them. Minimum 2.5 to 5 year contracts that they sign with them. So if somebody was mid-contract, they gave them a chance to go ahead and leave because they needed to trim their payroll.
So like this Thorne, was that his last name?
Yeah.
Thorpe, was he part of that? Like when he left, does he have to pay them back?
He doesn't have to pay them back, no. He left on good terms, what they consider good terms. So
But if he's leaving because they're not paying him,
Right.
like, did he get the free out, is what I'm
Yes,
saying?
yes. And so did many other people. So, yes, they're definitely bleeding money, and they probably went through a few million, but they, like I said, there was multiple accounts with 4, 5, 6 million in each account, and they had, I think, a total of 12, between 9 and 13 different bank accounts, ranging anywhere from 60,000 up to 12 million in one account, kind of thing. So to say that they would have anything less than 10 million now would be a lie, in my estimation.
Anything? Good?
Timeline-wise, if you needed, if I needed to diagram anything out or anything like that, and doing it via distance versus via on-site, I don't know what, is there something I should be looking at? I'm looking at, like, schedule-wise, like my daughter comes
We'll have-
back and forth, we got Thanksgiving coming up.
We'll have to talk to Pittsburgh County
Okay.
before I
But
get
we'll
it.
work with
But
you.
it'll be,
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll
Yeah.
be at your schedule.
Okay.
Black Friday, you're free.
Yeah.